Well, we're here with a special podcast, actually, because at long last, Mr. Joyce has decided to allow himself to be put into vision, which is kind of like a big thing. And likewise myself and Matthew Zajac, who is our interviewee today. Hello, Matthew.
Hello there.
So
Hi,
we're straddling kind of Britain a bit to do this podcast. The reason being that Matthew is starring in and has adapted a play by James Robertson, The Testament of Gideon Mack. This book was shortlisted for the Booker Prize in 2006. One of the things that drives me personally crazy is the incredible wealth of literary talent in Scotland that gets an innings, an outing, and then, a lot of people who have read it, put it on the shelf, and that's the end. In other parts of the UK, you might find that it becomes dramatised. It might well find its way into a TV series. It could become all sorts of things. And it seems only when you're James Robertson and extremely talented and live in Scotland that you don't find many of those things happening. So when I saw, Matthew, that you had actually taken the bit and gone for it, and your company Dogstar are actually producing a play, the Testament of Gideon Mack, I thought, let's have you on and talk about this because it's rare enough. So what sort of, first of all, so people get how immediate this is, you're just out of rehearsals day and night. When's the first production?
Well, today is Monday. The first performance is on Thursday night, and we're about to undertake our technical and dress rehearsals over the next few days at Eden Court Theatre in Inverness. One minor correction, Lesley, it was long-listed for the Booker Prize in 2006, not shortlisted, sadly. It's a very loved novel by those who know it, and it is in fact James's best-selling novel. So there are quite a lot of people across the whole of the UK actually who love this novel. It was the book of the year in the Richard and Judy book club on the telly way back in 2006, which did wonders for sales. And so, the tour is selling really well. I mean, we're already sold out in Inverness, Edinburgh, St Andrews, one or two other places. Stirling, I think, is just about sold out. And Dundee and various other places are heading that way. So, and I'm not surprised because I knew that the novel was loved, albeit it's not known by everyone in Scotland, but it ought to be because it's a wonderful story and it says a lot about Scotland's Presbyterian heritage, I suppose, and about our generation, the generation of the three of us, if you like, because I don't think we're that far apart age-wise. James is about 5 years older than me, I think, and it does kind of reflect his lifespan, if you like, up till the early years of this century.
Well, I mean, just give us a wee, potted history of what the Testament's about. Can you do that?
Well, yes, I can. Yeah, I'll do it as succinctly as I can. It is quite a complicated story. And of course, when you write a stage adaptation, it's inevitably reductive, so there are a lot of things in the that are not in the stage adaptation, which you'll find in the novel, inevitably. But nevertheless, it is it's an account by an unreliable narrator, Gideon Mack, of his own life. And he ends up being a Church of Scotland minister who doesn't believe in God, but then he meets the devil. So that is kind of at the sort of center of the whole story, but it's also a story about his life, about his loves, his failures in love. It's about his very austere upbringing in a manse in the 1960s, I suppose. And it's also about the kind of very rapid transformation Scotland's had from quite a religiously observant country when I was a child, when you were children, till now when very few people go to church. So it's about the kind of loss of faith, if you like, and the crisis of faith, you might describe it as, in our society and across the Western world.
And I mean, when you go, Pat.
Well, no, what I was going to ask was, it's almost a 400-page book. and you say it was reductive. You turned it into a 2-hour play. I mean, I was thinking about, yeah, exactly. I was thinking about this because when Peter Jackson and Fran Walsh adopted Lord of the Rings, they had pinned up in the room when they were writing the script, "It's the ring, stupid." Were there any characters or narrative elements that you had that was, for you, that was the core of the play?
Yes, well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's Gideon's relationship with his parents, there's Gideon's relationship with his wife and with his wife's best friend, and with his male university buddy, if you like. And then there's Gideon's encounter with the devil. I mean, those to me are the essential aspects of his story. And so I felt I couldn't possibly write this adaptation without writing those strands of the story. Yeah.
What made you go for this one in the first place? Because I mean, there's plenty. I don't know, has Joseph Knight? Look at all the other books James has written. This one.
Well, I actually think, I know James's work very well. I should have also mentioned his relationship with Catherine Craigie, by the way, before I move on to this, answer this question, who's an atheist historian who lives in the imaginary community of Monymasket, which is a bit like Inverbervie or somewhere of those wee towns in between Dundee and Aberdeen. But the reason I went, I've read virtually everything that James has ever had published, and when I read this novel in 2006, I could immediately see it on a stage. There's just something. Oh, sorry, that's a bit of crockery just falling over there.
Well, that's fine. Speak of the devil.
Stack it properly after lunch. Anyway, yeah, I could immediately sort of see this on a stage, especially the encounter with the devil. There's, I don't know, it's a very sort of Gothic kind of novel, if you like, a contemporary Gothic novel. It's very much in that, inspired by James Hogg's Confessions of a Justified Sinner. Sorry, I know that's not the full title. And the sort of the physical aspects of the story, that image of the black jaws, which is this cleft in the earth, which is inspired by the Black Rock Gorge, which is only about a mile down the road from where I am right now, just in the woods at Eventon. There's something just so sort of mysterious and dramatic about that, about Gideon falling into this chasm and disappearing for 3 days in a to a place which is a kind of huge dark cavern underground where he meets the devil. I mean, those things to me were just very exciting from the point of view of sticking them on the stage. So I told James this when I met him a few months after I read it in 2006, at which point he said, "Yes, and you should be the devil." And sadly, it has taken 19 years to realize that dream. I'm delighted that it is actually about to be realised, but it's been a very long road with a few cul-de-sacs on the way.
And you are the devil.
I am, yes. I'm playing the devil and his father.
Well, that was a way to ask, because I thought it was an interesting collation or even dichotomy, or is it dichotomy that he plays both? You play both the devil and the father. Does that give a hint as to the text?
Well, in a way, it's you could say that I've taken a few liberties with the story. It's also to do with the practicalities of trying to put on such a big story as this. We're lucky enough to have a cast of 8, which is much bigger than Dogstar Theatre Company can normally afford to put on stage. But strangely, Creative Scotland have been very kind to us on this occasion. And so we have 8 actors. But nevertheless, it means that every single actor who's in the play, apart from Kevin Lennon, who's playing Gideon Mack, and who's on stage virtually the whole time, has to play more than one character. And so, I kind of felt, you could say I've been a little bit mischievous, if you like, in that I thought it was quite appropriate, for the same actor, which is me, to play the devil and the dad. And there are other kind of contrasts or echoes, in terms of the way that the rest of the cast are, the roles the rest of the cast have, which kind of, I think it can be quite amusing to kind of think about, in terms of what the relationship is between one character and the other that they're playing. Yeah, that's.
I gotta say to you, Matthew, I had a wee look at reviews of Gideon Mack, right? And there's actually one by, it was on something like Goodreads, and I have to say it was somebody who doesn't live in Scotland, let's say, and perhaps is not quite as kind of, what would you say, just resigned or experienced in the sort of withholding Presbyterian nature of, many parenting episodes past. And she had kind of written, this is grey, depressing, the upbringing without any affection from parents or any real excitement, a domineering father, repressed desires, unrequited love, unhappy marriage. It doesn't make for like, how on earth are you going to sell that,
Yeah, but it's funny,
Is it funny to us because we're a bit weird? We're from that.
Well, no, I don't think so. I think it has sold quite well outside of Scotland, the Testament of Gideon Mack. And, it's funny, I imagine that it would do rather well in countries where, there's very little Presbyterianism, like Catholic countries or whatever. I don't know, it's a very human story, it's about human frailty, human imperfections, he's a flawed character. And sure, it is a very oppressive upbringing he has, but I think lots of people can relate to that because certainly, although we now live in a relatively kind of liberal society where there's less, well, I suppose there is less violence, as a sort of everyday thing than there used to be. When I went to school, we had the TAWs, we had the belt. And, that's long gone. Those kind of things are long gone. Corporal punishment for children is now, I think, illegal in Scotland, isn't it? And but it was normal when we were kids. So, and I think that's fairly common to most of the Western world, one way or another. So I think people can relate to it. And, it's funny in the way that, a lot of people don't find Samuel Beckett that funny, but actually Samuel Beckett thought his plays were comedies. And I agree with Samuel Beckett on that one. And so I think we are, it's not that we're actually trying to, go for lots of belly laughs from the audience, but I think they will find quite a lot of it funny. And there are some very funny lines. James, it was a gift to adapt because James writes such brilliant dialogue, So there's lots of wonderful dialogue in it. And it's not going to be a dreich, boring, glum 2 hours in the theatre, I can assure you.
Just as somebody, I said this to Lesley before, as someone who was brought up as a Catholic in Scotland. When I speak to my Irish cousins, they say to me, the problem with you Scottish Catholics is you're all Presbyterians. And that's the reality. I think, is there music in the play as well, Matthew?
There is. There's there aren't songs as such, but we've been very lucky. We've got a wonderful production team. And Aidan O'Rourke has written some beautiful music to accompany the show. He's also done the kind of sound design because there are quite a lot of sound effects. There's a few radio type clips and sort of giving you a little bit of the sort of political context of the period that's portrayed in the play. So we've been very lucky with that with Aidan, and we've got a wonderful designer called Kenneth MacLeod. And a wonderful lighting designer called Kate Bonney. And I'm very pleased to say that all three of them are from the Highlands. So we've also got a tremendous movement director called Sasha Harrington, and our director, who's a Canadian, Megan de Chastelaine, a young woman who's very talented. And we're pretty lucky with the team.
And Matthew, we've known each other for a very long time.
Yeah.
And people will hear your nasal twang kind of puts you somewhere north of Inverness for anyone who is a connoisseur of such things. But your most recent play was The Tailor of Inverness, which was an incredibly personal thing for you because it was about your dad. You played it, you wrote the book. And it's been like an epic. You've been all over Europe with it. I mean, congratulations for starters.
Cheers.
But has that changed things for you? You know, has it given you more confidence to take on something like this and do adaptations? And
Yeah, well, yes. I mean, I'm quite an old person now, and I mean, for many, many decades, I never thought of myself as a writer. I kind of dabbled in it a bit, but yeah, the success of the Tailor of Inverness, which has been going since 2008, certainly did make me think, oh well, maybe I can write things. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, it was 2006 when I thought about the idea of turning Testament of Gideon Mack into a play. So I suppose it was all these things were happening around the same time, because the whole Tailor of Inverness, the sort of uncovering of the story, which became the play and the book of the Tailor of Inverness, all happened during that period as well, in the early sort of years of the century. So I suppose I was just beginning to think, well, maybe I should actually try and apply myself properly and try and do a bit of writing, and maybe it'll be okay, but I'm very slow and I'm very lazy, so this is the third play I'll have had produced. I'm not a prolific writer by any stretch of the imagination. I'm not a professional writer like yourself, Lesley, in that sense, although I can be.
Yeah. Well, see, neither am I. What have I done recently?
Well, you
did a book last year.
For heaven's sake.
Well, yes, that's true. They do get cranked out. But actually, it's this funny one, isn't it, about who qualifies as being like a proper writer? Because I don't think I am. But anyway, this is, let's not go down the rabbit hole of all the imposter stuff. Just when it comes up to Dogstar, though, you're the artistic director of Dogstar, which is a theatre company based in the Highlands, and your description of how many people in this play are from the Highlands gives that, well done, because that's so difficult. I know how difficult it is. Have you had funding problems up till now?
Well, it's a funny old thing. I mean, Dogstar was founded by Hamish MacDonald, who's a poet and playwright himself, a long time ago. I mean, really about 25 years ago. And I sort of joined up with Hamish. I suppose 2001 was when I first got involved with the company, but then we sort of formally started running the company together in 2004. So I've been doing it for just over 20 years now. Hamish gave up in 2014 due to his frustrations with the capriciousness of Creative Scotland, the unreliability of our funders in relation to the company. And, on one level, I suppose if someone looked kind of objectively at my commitment to running this company over the years, they might think I was a bit of a mug. The sort of ironic aspect of the whole thing is that, virtually nothing that Dogstar has achieved would have been possible without the support of Creative Scotland. And so I have to acknowledge that and appreciate that. But it has been so difficult. The company, in the 15 years up to the pandemic in 2020, I think you would be very hard pressed to name another Scottish theatre company that had toured as widely throughout Scotland and achieved what it did internationally during that period. We co-produced with companies from Sweden and Denmark. We visited, I think, about 13 different countries. I mean, the Tailor of Inverness was particularly successful from that point of view, but the co-productions we did with Profil Theatre in Sweden and Mungo Park Theatre in Denmark were not anything to do with the Tailor of Inverness, although we did take the play, the Tailor of Inverness, to their theatres during that period. But in spite of the kind of success, ostensibly, of the company over those years, and more recently, I mean, Creative Scotland have given us a lot of money in the last couple of years. We've never had the longer term funding, which can only be for 3 years, during that period. We made 5 attempts to get that 3-year funding since 2007, I think, was the first time we could do it. We could make the application, and it's been turned down every time. And we were turned down for it for the 5th time just about 10 days ago. And or nearly 2 weeks ago, and that has been particularly galling because I'm delighted that the Scottish Government has increased Creative Scotland's grant from them by something like 30%, which is unheard of. You know, it's a really substantial increase that Creative Scotland are receiving from the Scottish Government. And as a consequence, they've been able to give far more money out to the multi-year funded, as they call it, companies in the decisions that they have just announced. And that includes the most new companies to that kind of funding that there have ever been. And I thought, well, this is, if we're ever going to get this kind of funding, we're going to get it now. And we didn't. And the reasons for it are highly questionable, as far as I can see. But I think it's also to do with a fundamental kind of problem that there has been, you know, for many years now, in the way that the work of artists is assessed. You know, the art often, you know, is just one more criterion in a raft of criterion, which include, you know, financial management, public engagement, governance, equalities, diversity and inclusion, environmental sustainability. The art, you know, is virtually like equal and just one criterion among the 6 or 7 or 8 or however many there are. And that doesn't seem right to me. We should be seen as a national company because that's what we do. We tour throughout the whole of Scotland. You know, Testament of Gideon Mack's going to Dumfries, it's going to Stornoway, it's going to Dundee, it's going to Greenock. You know, we're going all over the place. So, yeah, I'm sorry if this is a bit of a moan, and please do edit out some of the more moaning aspects.
It's all right. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing it in Dundee, actually, which is kind of towards the tail end of things, actually. But anyway, we'll put the link up so that people can have a look and see where they can manage to jump in and see it. But I mean, I really recommend to people, having seen your previous productions, go and see this if you possibly can, because it's one hell of a combination of people. And you as the devil and his dad, that's kind of tasty as well, Matthew, you know. No, an Inverness. Is it an Invernessian devil?
Well, it is actually.
You see, there's another selling point.
Yeah.
Anyway, well, good luck with it, Matthew, and back into your 24-hour rehearsals and so on. And thank you very much for your time.
Thanks a lot, Lesley. Take care of yourselves. Cheers.